Gravy Bones wins yet again, and the questions will continue to rain down. Is now finally the time for the deck to receive some sort of a ban or restriction? Well, look, I'm here to tell you that if any time, it might as well be now. But let's talk about one thing first, because here's the top 8. This was a top 8 that was slanted away from Gravy Bones. Gravy Bones was the most popular deck on the weekend at the Calling in Kansas City. And, well, regardless of how popular and targeted it was, the best players still took it to the mountaintop, making it into the grand finals. I will not tell you who won. If you want to go back and watch it, just understand Gravy Bones picked up the win. And I will tell you the two players that rode all the way to the top. Evan Herndon faced down Jacob Clements. These are two of the best players in Flesh and Blood. One of them a former U.S. national champion, and the other one has more points on that leaderboard thing for the end of the year than, well, apparently one of the casters has seen closets, or was it cupboards? I don't know. It was something. It was a lot of points is what he was, trying to elucidate. Also, I don't know where all his hair went, but is a pretty spicy new cut. Either way, what we're looking at here is a top 8 that probably should not have gone the way of Gravy Bones, but it ended up doing so because the best players take this deck and they push it to the top. It's crazy. And it's also unfortunate because I will point out that if Guy Cohen on Fang and Matthew Renz on Acilio were not paired against each other, this could have gone a completely different way. Like if this had been a newcomer or like a Dark Horse deck versus a Gravy Bones in all of these splits and all of these slots, or at least 3 of these slots, this would have probably gone some other which way, like it did previous weekends. Nevertheless, it did not go that way. Gravy Bones, turns out, is just that good. And here's the question that people continue to ask. Is it time for Gravy Bones to receive a ban of some sort? And look, let me just bring you close. Look, here's the thing. I know there's going to be people out there that think I'm simping on Gravy Bones. And I know there's going to be people that think I'm going to say, no, the deck shouldn't be banned, but I have something to tell you. This deck right here, this one right here, it's not actually my favorite deck in the game. It's not my favorite deck in CC even. Look, I like the deck a lot. I love Pirates. I think Pirates are really cool. I think Pirates have a fantastic place in the game of Flesh and Blood, but I will say that this is my second favorite deck in the format, and it probably does at some point need to be touched. And if it's going to be touched by, in any way, shape, or form, it might as well come right now. And there are some options to do so. I will tell you, I don't believe that it's like purely necessary from a numbers standpoint and a winning standpoint for it to really be touched, because I do think that this meta is open enough that players can target this deck and find success. But the counterpoint to that is what I mentioned already. The best players are pivoting to this deck and are taking it to its logical limits. They are pushing this deck to its numerical maximums. And because of that, maybe you could argue that now is the time to bring its power level down into parity with others. You could say that. You could say the delays for Guardian Mastery Pack mean that Mastery Pack doesn't really hit with a splash, partly because Gravy Bones exists. And if you pull his power level down, then maybe you're like giving more rise to the Guardians that could be coming up into the meta with Gravy Bones, the really only board state deck in the game right now that can't be immediately countered by a Guardian. I mean, might as well cut him. So here's what I would say. Now, there's a lot of people that are saying Golden Tipple is the card to remove from the deck. I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I feel like this is the engine that makes the deck run, and if LSS doesn't give Gravy Bones like an expansion slot that does something similar to this, or gives him a new way to sort of like build an angle towards, which is really hard to do at one set later and in like one expansion slot card, then this card should not be touched in a meaningful way. But if you're going to do it, you might as well take the red. Why the red? I think taking the blue is the biggest cut. You're cutting the deck off at the stump by taking the blue, or by taking the yellow and the blue. But if you take the red, you're touching the deck a little bit, and you're taking away something that can make the mirror even more difficult. Golden Tipple being a 3 removes a lot of allies off the board in the mirror, and it's just extra damage that the deck can really send and chip. Taking the red doesn't hit the deck to the nth degree. If you took the blue, you swap in some blues for it and you lose a lot of extra power. In fact, I will say taking any of the Golden Tipples, you lose a lot of extra power because you're losing gold generation, and the deck really starts to immediately crumble in on itself, and the hero is a lot less playable. And if you have a hero that's unplayable, well, then you have to go about like trying to balance and give it enough power, but not too much power to bring it like way up. And you get like the Olympia problem, which is unfortunate. Which, by the way, this week I will talk about how I think they could have done something with Olympia that would have, like a 1-card change that would have fixed it. Either way, Golden Tipple to me is not the answer, but if you're gonna touch it, touch the reds. Now here is the answer, and I'll go so far. I've already said this before. Take Saltwater Swell. This is the card that really pushes the deck over the top and lets you dig and do crazy things, because this gives you the resources to crack gold after gold after gold. I said it before, you take red Saltwater Swell, and I think the deck has to adjust a little bit. Maybe it splashes more reds in place of these reds. Maybe it's just content to run like 3 other yellow cards. But if you really want to take it all the way down, take all 3 colors, all 3 copies, including the blue. If you take the blue, the deck loses 3 great blues. It loses the ability for these like giant splash turns, and it makes you play a lot more of an honest game where you're having to pay for things. The issue, though, is that if the blue goes, then you end up running into this painful, I guess a pain point is the best way to describe it, where you have all of these expensively statted cards that are all allies, and you want to get them out of the graveyard. And so sometimes you want to play this card, sometimes you want to pitch it for later, but sometimes you need the resources to be able to actually play one of those expensive allies out. And if you lose all of these blues that are also kind of doing the same thing, then you run into the fact that the deck has been built and the hero has been built with this resource availability in mind that is no longer available. That's the problem that I could see taking multiple blues. Like if you took blue Swell and blue Golden Tipple, I know I have the reds right here, but if you took both of those, then you run into this issue where you're going to have to replace those with inferior blues. And not only that, you're also going to run into the issue where you just can't get resources in the same way that you might. Is that going to come to fruition? I don't know. Could I be knocking it out of proportion that it would really hurt the deck even further than I think? I don't know. Maybe it would hurt it less. Maybe it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I do believe that if you're going to take something, take Saltwater Swell. Either the blues is the biggest hit, which is probably a hit that the deck can absorb. But if you take all the swells, it doesn't actually do that much different. If you want to take one card from Gravy Bones and make it the maximum amount where the deck can still absorb the blow and be a functional deck, take all of the Saltwater Swells and you'd be fine. The deck would still function, it just wouldn't go nearly as wide, and it would have to work a little harder on some of these turns to be able to do a Conqueror turn or pay for like a Swabby and a swing, things like that, right? That's what Swell enables, those things to be relatively easy. If the deck was always designed for that cost curve for this card to exist, then you might be up a little bit of a creek. But those are the first 2 things. Now, things I don't think you can touch, any of these types of cards. Look, you can't really touch Chum, or I would say probably any ally. You probably can't touch any ally whatsoever because you run the risk of invalidating the Armory deck that you already put out that people can still buy on like TCG Player, or if it's local. You run the risk of just removing their ability to even play and effectuate a game plan. If you remove allies, you're starting to just lose out on things that you put in the deck for the actual purpose. Like the deck just becomes a hodgepodge of like a nothing burger. It does numbers maybe, like, I don't know. So I don't know if you can really lose allies. Well, you probably can't do this one. Like, I don't know if you can really take Conqueror of the High Seas. I don't know. It doesn't strike me as a card that, like, it's a power card in the deck. It's one of the most powerful plays that the deck has, but does removing this card solve any of the issues that the deck actually does? The thing about Gravy Bones and what makes him so powerful in the right hands is players that know their deck counts, know what they can draw into, and know how to extend their turns. Because it's so easy for a less good player to just pop a bunch of gold when it probably doesn't actually matter or really change what you're doing with the deck. This doesn't really have any effect on that. It just becomes 8 damage, like, if you do it correctly. So maybe you can remove it, but it doesn't really feel like it's actually solving any problems, which again takes me back to the fact that Saltwater Swell is probably the answer. And if you really had to, if you wanted to go nuclear, take all salt waters, which are the reds and the blues because they don't play the yellows right now, but maybe you just hit them all. And then you take red, golden tipple. You leave yellows and blues in the deck, which some people were trying and playing around with already, and you make Gravy Bones go in a slightly different direction, or at least to just exchange, for maybe more defense reactions to play more slow and defensively. Maybe that's the way that you handle this deck. Either way, Swell goes, and along with that, this wonderful Swell shirt, which is why I actually wore this shirt for this video, because the tides, they may be turning. The tides may be changing. Also, if you would like this shirt you can get on Into the AM. You can use my link in my description. This shirt is incredible. It glows in the dark. It feels comfortable. It looks good. It's a great way to support the pirates, the pirate heroes in general. I mean, it's pretty hype. So if you want this shirt, thanks to Into the AM down in the comments below, you can have 10% off. And you can also support the channel because this 10% goes to me so that I can make more videos for you to watch while you seethe about Gravy Bones and his dominance over the meta with his huge play rates and his 3.5% win rate across the meta game. He's clearly the second coming of Starvo. If you enjoy this type of content, make the number go to the other number. And as always, everybody, thanks for watching.